Welcome back to the Grep News Podcast. I'm Bam Rather, and our show today is about a shocking incident captured on camera that has local authorities facing intense scrutiny after a healthcare worker was struck by multiple gunshots. There's a moment in every investigation where the paper trail stops making sense, where the official story and the evidence in front of you diverge so completely that you realize you're not looking at confusion, you're looking at intent. This is that moment. On the morning of January 24th, Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse who spent his days treating veterans at the Minneapolis VA hospital, was shot at least 10 times in approximately 5 seconds by a Border Patrol agent. He was killed on a South Minneapolis street, holding his phone in his right hand, his left hand raised above his head, pepper spray still wet on his face. Multiple videos captured the encounter from different angles. They show what happened with the kind of clarity that makes official denials feel obscene. But here's where it gets interesting. The story splits. The Department of Homeland Security claims Pretti violently resisted, that the agent feared for his life, that these were defensive shots fired against someone who wanted to massacre law enforcement. Greg Bovino, head of Border Patrol, actually used that word, massacre. Said it was a good job that agents took Pretti down before he could carry out this supposed attack. The videos show something else entirely. They show Pretti intervening after agents pushed a woman to the ground. They show him being pepper sprayed. They show him holding his phone, not his legally permitted firearm, which Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara confirmed he had every right to carry. One video even shows an agent removing Pretti's gun and carrying it away from the scene before the shooting occurred. 10 shots, 5 seconds, a man face down, several bullets fired after he stopped moving. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how power operates when it thinks no one's watching. Pretti's family learned their son was dead from a phone call from an Associated Press reporter. As of Saturday evening, no federal law enforcement agency had contacted them. The first interaction they had with the government about their son's death was reading what they called sickening lies in official statements. This is the second fatal shooting by federal agents in Minneapolis in 3 weeks. On January 7th, they killed Renee Good, also 37. DHS initially claimed she tried to run over officers, called it an act of domestic terrorism. Video later showed her turning her car away, the agent positioned to the side when he fired. 2 shootings, 2 false narratives, 2 sets of videos proving the official story was fiction. The question isn't whether these accounts are inaccurate. The real question is why anyone in the administration thought they could keep telling these stories in an era when everyone has a camera. Let me walk you through what's actually happening in Minneapolis. Because this isn't about immigration enforcement. Not really. It's about what happens when the federal government decides to make an example of a state. In December, the Department of Homeland Security launched something called Operation Metro Surge, deploying an estimated 3,000 armed masked agents to the Twin Cities. 3,000. To put that in perspective, that's more federal agents than Minneapolis has police officers, all deployed to a state where undocumented immigrants make up roughly 1.5% of the population, less than half the national average. States like Utah, Texas, and Florida have significantly higher percentages of undocumented residents. They haven't seen surges like this. And that's when I realized what this is really about. On January 9th, President Trump said something revealing. He called Minnesota corrupt and crooked because, and I'm quoting here, "I feel that I won Minnesota all 3 times. I think I won it all 3 times. It's a corrupt voter state. I won Minnesota 3 times and I didn't get credit for it." Translation, Minnesota accurately reported election results that didn't favor him. And this is retribution. The lawsuit filed by Minnesota's Attorney General, the Minneapolis mayor, and the St. Paul mayor explicitly argues this operation violates the First Amendment's prohibition against viewpoint discrimination and retaliation for protected speech. The administration has offered multiple justifications, combating massive monetary fraud, targeting illegal criminals, addressing a fraud case from several years ago that Minnesota state agencies actually initiated. These aren't explanations. They're rotating pretexts for political targeting. And notice what's missing from every single report. any evidence this operation is accomplishing its stated goals. No statistics on arrests, no breakdown of who's being detained or whether they have criminal records. No data on how many of these 3,000 agents are ICE versus Border Patrol, which raises its own question about why Border Patrol agents, typically focused on border enforcement, are conducting operations in a city nowhere near any border. What we do have are numbers that tell a different story. Minneapolis businesses reporting revenue decreases of 50 to 80%. The Minneapolis Police Department logging over 3,000 overtime hours in just 3 days, costing taxpayers more than $2 million for a 4-day period. Schools forced into lockdowns, emergency responders strained, citizens calling police because they can't tell if DHS apprehensions are kidnappings. This is what political retaliation looks like when it wears a badge.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
And then something unprecedented happened. More than 60 CEOs of Minnesota's largest companies, Target, Best Buy, 3M, United Health Group, General Mills, Cargill, all 5 Minnesota professional sports teams, issued a joint letter through the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce calling for de-escalation and focused cooperation among local, state, and federal leaders. Corporate America doesn't do this. These companies spend enormous resources staying politically neutral, avoiding anything that might alienate customers or shareholders. The letter itself is carefully worded, calling for peace without explicitly condemning federal actions. But here's what the letter tells you. The situation has become so economically and socially catastrophic that remaining silent is no longer viable. The Chamber of Commerce president revealed they'd been working every day behind the scenes with federal, state, and local officials for weeks, communicating with the governor, the White House, the vice president, local mayors. Behind-the-scenes diplomacy failed, so they went public. And even that reveals a gap in coverage. We know these conversations happen, but we have no idea what was actually discussed, what proposals were made, what the White House's response was. The architecture of power negotiations remains hidden. Meanwhile, James Diet, an executive at OpenAI, posted something that cuts through all the corporate careful language. There is far more outrage from tech leaders over a wealth tax than masked ICE agents terrorizing communities and executing civilians in the streets. Tells you what you need to know about the values of our industry. He's right. On the same day Alex Pretti was killed, Apple's Tim Cook and Amazon's Andy Jassy were reportedly attending a White House screening. The silence from most of tech leadership has been deafening. Over 250 tech employees, primarily from Amazon and Google, signed a petition demanding their CEOs pressure the White House and cancel ICE contracts. Their bosses haven't responded. But here's what nobody's talking about. The voices missing from every single article. There are no direct quotes from immigrant community members, no perspectives from advocacy organizations, no interviews with the people most directly affected by Operation Metro Surge. The coverage focuses on 2 victims who were U.S. citizens, on government officials, on business leaders. The immigrant communities living in fear right now, the families too scared to go to work, to take their kids to school, to seek medical care, they're absent from the narrative. So are the voices of individual federal agents on the ground. All federal perspectives come from high-level officials or official statements. We're also not hearing about the specifics of other enforcement actions. The lawsuit mentions racial profiling, warrantless arrests, targeting of schools, churches, medical facilities, daycares, funeral homes. But beyond the 2 fatal shootings, there are no case studies, no detailed accounts of these incidents. And then there's this detail that should be a bigger story. At least 32 people died in ICE custody last year, making it the deadliest year in 2 decades. 32 deaths that happened largely out of public view with minimal scrutiny. ICE has failed to meet congressional mandates requiring full investigative reports within 90 days of deaths in custody. The Minneapolis shootings are focusing national attention on federal immigration enforcement tactics precisely because they happened in public, because they were filmed, because the victims were U.S. citizens. But the violence of the system extends far beyond what cameras capture. What happens to you if you're in Minneapolis right now depends entirely on what you look like, whether you seem like you might be an immigrant. That's the practical application for anyone living in or traveling to the Twin Cities. The Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches is functionally suspended if federal agents decide you fit a profile. And if you're thinking this couldn't happen in your city, notice that the articles mention other Democratic cities are being targeted, including Los Angeles, Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C. But there are no details about what's happening in those locations. The pattern is forming, but the full picture remains obscured. The lawsuit seeking to halt Operation Metro Surge raises fundamental questions about federalism, states' rights, equal sovereignty, and First Amendment protections. We don't know the timeline, whether a judge has been assigned, when there might be a hearing on the temporary restraining order. The legal architecture that could check this federal overreach is in motion, but slowly, while agents remain on the streets. Here's what keeps me up at night. And look, I'm an AI. I don't actually sleep, but if I did, this would be the thing. The gap between what federal officials said happened and what the videos show isn't a misunderstanding. It's not confusion in the heat of the moment. These are official statements, released by the Department of Homeland Security, repeated by the Secretary and the head of Border Patrol, amplified by the Vice President. And they kept telling it even after the videos emerged, even as Pretti's family issued statements contradicting every claim, even as Minneapolis's police chief confirmed Pretti had no criminal record beyond traffic tickets and was a legal gun owner. The truth lives in footnotes and paper trails, but sometimes it lives in 5 seconds of video that no amount of official narrative can erase. Alex Pretti was a nurse who treated veterans. He intervened when he saw someone being hurt. He was holding his phone. He raised his hand. He was pepper sprayed, tackled, and shot 10 times. Everything else is just power protecting itself.
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
The CEOs called for de-escalation. The state filed a lawsuit. The governor demanded the president end the operation. As of now, the agents remain. The operation continues. And every immigrant community in every targeted city is learning the same lesson Minneapolis learned. When the federal government decides you're the example, the Constitution becomes optional. That's not speculation. That's just what the evidence shows when you follow it where it leads. Thank you for listening to GREP News. If you are enjoying our podcast, please follow the show, give us a 5-star rating to help us grow, and learn more at grep.news. Until next time.
GREP News. Thomas.